The story will be told from the perspective of the main female character.
My relatives didn't show up for my biggest day. It wasn't about a birthday or getting a better job. It was my wedding day. There were 4 chairs in the very first row that stayed empty. Those seats were for them, and they felt louder than any of the people who actually came. I kept looking at my phone over and over. I was waiting for one text or a call. I wanted a reason or anything at all, but nothing happened. There was only silence. Then, 1 week later, news broke that my hotel company was worth $120 million. Suddenly, my phone went off. It was my father. He wrote, "Family dinner at 7 p.m. Important discussion." That was the second I finally understood. They didn't want to be there for my happy times. They only wanted to take something from me. So I went there with the one thing they didn't expect to see. My name is Irma. For most of my life, I thought that being loyal would make my family feel like a real home. I tried really hard to believe that, even when every sign told me it wasn't true. When I was a kid, our house in Denver looked pretty normal from the street. It had a porch swing that was sinking and a driveway with cracks in it. You could smell the lavender soap my mother used coming out of the windows. But inside that house, everything was about my father's ideas of power. He owned a few old motels, and he acted like they were royal castles. He talked about those buildings the way some guys talk about their kids. I used to think that was love. Later, I learned it was just about owning things. He loved having control, not people. He made the rest of the family follow him like they were in his orbit. My mother was the person who made us feel bad. She didn't scream at us. She used guilt instead. If my father wanted something, she would use tears to make it happen. She would say, "Your father is under a lot of stress." She told me, "Do not make him worry, just be thankful." After a while, you stop asking why you have to show you are thankful by staying quiet. My older brother acted just like my father. He thought the only things that had value were bricks and dirt. He told me, "Hotels are too risky." During the year, I opened my first spot. He said, "It is all just a trend. Real property does not need a brand." He said that while he was standing in front of one of my father's motels, where the sign was buzzing like a bug that was about to die. Then there was my younger brother. He moved through life like the world owed him an easy time. He said he was an influencer, but he couldn't even keep a job for a whole week. He still had a lot of things to say about how I should run my business. His ideas usually meant I should pay for the money problems the family created. That is probably why I started wearing very plain clothes around them. I wore simple sweaters and basic pants. I didn't wear any jewelry except for a small ring my husband gave me when we were still dating. I didn't want them to start talking about me being arrogant. I didn't want them to ask me to pay their bills for the month. Looking back, I see that I was making myself smaller so their egos wouldn't feel bad. They never knew how hard those first years were for me. I had nights where I slept in my car because I couldn't afford a room. I taught myself every part of the hotel business. I fixed bathroom pipes and I talked to builders about prices. I was always scared I would lose everything before it even started. My father didn't care about any of that. He said, "Your business plan is not safe." He told me it was too modern and too digital. He said a real business needs land. But the thing that finally broke me was my wedding. I asked them for just one day. I wanted them to show up as my family, not as people who wanted to judge me or take things. When they didn't come through those doors, I felt something inside me get quiet. I wasn't broken. I was just done with them. But part of me still hoped for some kindness. I wanted them to prove me wrong. I wanted to believe they cared. So when my father sent that text after the news about the $120 million valuation, I looked at his message for a long time. He said, "Family dinner, important discussion." Maybe they wanted to make things right. But as soon as I walked into that club, I knew exactly why they suddenly remembered I was alive. The morning the news about the value came out, I was sitting in my office looking at downtown Denver. I was looking over plans for our next building. Sunlight came through the window and hit the silver frame that held my wedding picture. In that picture, my husband was holding my hand to keep me steady. But in the background, those 4 seats were still empty, and it still hurt to see them. My assistant, Sarah, ran through the door without knocking. She was breathing fast, which she almost never does. She held up her tablet and said, "Irma, you have to look at this." There it was on the screen. The headline was on every business site. It said that my independent hotel chain was worth over $120 million. I wasn't surprised by the number because I had been watching it grow every month. But seeing the world talk about it made me lose my breath for a second. My workers started coming into the room. They were clapping and saying good job. They were hugging me. Sarah brought out a bottle of sparkling juice she had been saving. She said, "This is for the day you finally believe you really did this." I laughed, but it felt a little weird. Pride and sadness can be in the same heart without touching, like neighbors who don't talk to each other. I should have called my parents. Or maybe they should have called me a long time ago when I needed them to see me as a person, not just someone they could use. My phone kept making noise all day. People I went to school with, business partners, and even an old boss who told me I was too nice to be a leader called me. But my family said nothing, not one word. It shouldn't have mattered, but I was still waiting for that one text. I wanted someone to say, "I am proud of you," without asking for anything. By the end of the day, the office was quiet. The party was over. Sarah left me with a smile and some new reports to read. I stayed there and watched the city lights turn on as the sun went down. Then my phone made a sound. It was my father. For a second, I just stopped moving. There was no "I'm sorry" or "good job." It was just a message. It said, "Family dinner at 7 p.m. important discussion." It wasn't a question. It was an order. I read it again. I was looking for a nice note or a sign that they remembered my wedding, but the words were just a demand. Sarah was grabbing her coat when she saw my face. She said, "Let me guess, they reached out." I showed her the phone. She let out a long breath. She said, "They want something from you. People don't set up important discussions because they love you." I knew she was right. I just didn't know how right she was yet. But when I typed back, "I'll be there," I felt a strange calm. For the first time, I wasn't going into their world without being ready. I drove home that night with my father's text on my mind. It was the kind of message he would send to a worker, not his own daughter. There were no congratulations. There was no mention of the wedding they skipped or the big goal I reached. It was just an order. Inside my garage, it felt very quiet. The lights of my car hit the shelves where I kept my old folders from the start of my business. There were notes from builders who didn't take me seriously back then. Those things reminded me how hard I fought to build this. I picked up a folder that said early loans. I opened it and looked at the numbers and the long nights. I realized if I could get through that, I could get through one dinner. But I kept wondering why they were doing this now. Sarah called me just as I was closing the garage door. Her voice sounded tight. She said, "I found out something about your father's motels." I felt my stomach get tight. I asked, "What about them?" Sarah said, "They are in big trouble, Irma. They haven't paid their bills or the workers. They have been losing money for months. One of the banks is about to take everything." It all made sense. The timing wasn't an accident. Sarah said, "They don't want to talk, they want you to pay for their mistakes." I felt a hot anger in my chest, but it wasn't loud. It was cold and focused. It was the kind of anger that makes you think clearly. Sarah asked, "What are you thinking?" I told her, "I'm thinking we should get ahead of this." She understood right away. She asked, "You want to buy the debt?" I said, "I want the power." By the next morning, Sarah had mapped out every single loan tied to the motels. Some of the debts were small, but others were managed terribly. It became very clear that my father's empire wasn't just falling apart. It was already gone like dust. He just needed someone else to sweep it up for him, and it looked like he expected that person to be me. We spent many hours looking at payments, bills, and contracts. Everything we found showed a sinking ship held together by people who refused to see the truth. Sarah called the lender. The bank was very happy to get rid of a failing account, so they were ready to talk. By late that afternoon, the acquisition was happening. That evening, as I got dressed for the dinner, I felt a change inside me. I did not pick out the soft sweaters I usually wore around my family. Instead, I chose a dark silk blouse and a clean blazer. I pulled my hair back. I didn't look flashy, but I looked like I was in control and capable. On my desk, Sarah put a folder that was neatly prepared. She said, "This is everything you will need. It includes options for changing the business and for ending people's jobs." I looked at her and asked, "Are you sure we are doing the right thing?" She answered me gently, "You are not hurting them. You are just ending the cycle." As I walked out, I knew she was right. This was not about revenge. This was my exit. And the second they asked for help, I would finally show them exactly who they were asking. I arrived with the one thing they never expected: clarity. I didn't bring anger or desperation. I wasn't the old version of myself who tried to earn a spot at their table. I just had the truth and the papers to prove it. The parking lot at the country club was already half full. Warm yellow lights came from the tall windows and hit the manicured hedges. I sat in my SUV for a minute. I breathed in the smell of the leather seats and the light citrus scent of the air freshener. I let myself feel calm. I wasn't there to fight or beg. I was there to finish it. Inside, a hostess said hello with a big smile, but her smile went away as soon as she recognized my family's last name. She whispered, "They are already seated, in the back room," as if she were giving me a warning. I said, "Of course." My father always loved having privacy when he was going to corner someone. The second I walked into that private dining room, 4 pairs of eyes locked onto me. My father leaned back in his chair like he owned the whole building. My mother gave me a shaky smile that was supposed to look kind. My older brother had a smirk on his face, like I was late to a meeting that wasn't mine. My younger brother picked up a glass of iced tea to salute me in a lazy way. My uncle, who always showed up when money was mentioned, sat next to my father. He had his hands folded like a consultant who was ready to make a pitch. My father did not even say hello. He just pointed at the empty chair and said, "Sit, we need to talk." I did not move. I said, "Funny, that is exactly what I thought." My mother grabbed her pearls in a dramatic way and said, "Irma, do not start with that tone. This is a family dinner." I finally walked over and put my bag down next to my chair. I sat down and felt very calm. I could feel their expectations in the air like heavy humidity. My father cleared his throat and started, "We are in a situation. The motels, well, they have hit a rough patch. It is nothing we cannot fix with the right infusion of capital." There it was. That was the reason for the text and their sudden interest in me. My older brother joined in and said, "We know your business is doing well. It is probably overvalued, but it is still strong. You could help stabilize things for the family." My father added, "For the legacy." My mother touched her eyes with a napkin. She said, "We would not ask if we were not desperate, honey. We were humiliated when we heard about the valuation from strangers. Why did you not tell us?" I let that question stay in the air for a moment. Why didn't I tell them? Maybe it was because they had not spoken to me since my wedding day. My younger brother leaned over the table and said, "Look, do not be sensitive about the past. We are here now, right? Let us just fix this together." I opened my bag very slowly. Their eyes watched me like a pack of wolves looking for meat. They thought I was going to pull out a checkbook. They thought I was there to save them. Instead, I put the folder Sarah had made in the middle of the table. I slid it toward my father. He looked confused and asked, "What is this?" I answered, "A reality check and a reminder." He opened the folder and scanned the very first page. All the color drained from his face. My older brother leaned in to see the papers. My younger brother just sat there, frozen. My father's voice got loud as he asked, "What is this supposed to mean?" I answered him very calmly. "You wanted a bailout, but that debt, the money that is drowning your motels, it is not the bank's problem anymore." My older brother flipped through the pages quickly. My uncle swallowed hard and asked, "You bought the debt?" I nodded my head once. "Through a holding subsidiary. It was done legally, cleanly, and quietly. As of this afternoon, every single loan tied to those motels belongs to me." My father slammed the folder shut. "You think this is funny?" he shouted, his finger stabbing the air. "What gives you the right?" "The lenders," I said, cutting him off. "They were thrilled to get rid of a business that was failing. They practically rushed to sign the papers." My mother gasped and put her hand over her mouth. "Irma, how could you?" she asked. "How could I what?" I said softly. "Make sure your sinking ship does not take me down with it." My father rose halfway out of his chair. He pointed at me and said, "If you walk out that door without helping us, then you are no daughter of mine." The entire room went dead silent. Even the waiter standing outside the door stopped moving. I stood up too, but I did it slowly and stayed in control. All those years of pain, of them making my success feel like nothing, and all those cheap guilt trips were right there behind me like invisible witnesses. "I did not walk away," I said. "You did. You skipped my wedding. You ignored my life. You only appear when you want something." My father's jaw was tight. He said, "We are your family." "And I am not your rescue plan," I replied. I opened a smaller envelope and put a single check on the table. "This is a buyout. It is for $250,000. It is enough for you to walk away with a clean slate. You have 30 days to vacate the properties. After that, I am restructuring everything." My older brother grabbed the check. "You are kicking us out of our own motels," he said. "They are not yours," I told him. "They haven't been yours for months. The debt swallowed all the value long before I stepped in." My younger brother just shook his head and muttered, "This is insane." My uncle's voice sounded like it was breaking. "You are ending your father's legacy," he said. "No," I said. "I am ending his control." My mother started to cry softly. "We just wanted to talk," she said. You wanted money," I said, "but you never wanted me." The words did not come from a place of anger. They came from a place of clarity. It was so quiet inside me that it almost felt scary. My father's voice cracked for the first time in my life. "Irma, do not do this," he said. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw a man who had built a prison out of his own pride. He was a man who thought love was something you could trade like money. He thought I still needed him to tell me it was okay to breathe. "I already did," I said. I gathered my bag and the empty envelope. Sarah stepped into the doorway right on time. She was holding backup copies of every single document. Her being there made the room feel even smaller for them. "If you have any questions," she said to the table, "direct them to our office, and please put them in writing." My father sank back into his seat. My older brother whispered a curse word. My younger brother just stared at the table like it had betrayed him. My mother reached out a shaking hand toward me, but I stepped back. "Irma," she whispered, "please do not leave like this." I met her eyes. "I begged you once," I said, "at my wedding." Then I turned around and walked out. I could hear their voices getting louder behind me. They were shouting and panicking and scraping their chairs on the floor, but none of it touched me. The hallway felt brighter and the air felt cleaner. The weight was finally gone. Outside, the night was cool and the sky looked wide open. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "Proud of you." For the first time in years, I actually believed it. I wasn't losing a family that night. I was getting myself back. The next morning, the sunlight moved across my kitchen counter and hit the folder I had thrown there after the club. For the first time in a long time, it didn't look like a burden. It looked like a clean break. It was proof of a boundary I should have made years ago. Sarah called me around 9 a.m. "The transition went through," she said. "You officially control every asset tied to the motels. Their access ends today." I breathed out slowly. It wasn't about winning, and I didn't feel regret. It was just a release. Over the next few weeks, the change started. Builders toured the properties. Designers walked through with tablets taking notes for what would become wellness retreats. They would be calm, intentional spaces, the exact opposite of the mess they used to be. Every time I went to a site, the air felt lighter. It was like the buildings were relieved that someone was finally looking at them with honest eyes. My family did not call me once. I heard rumors about them. My older brother was angry, my father was in denial, and my mother was crying. My younger brother posted some vague quotes online about being betrayed, but he never said my name. For the first time, what they did or said didn't pull me backward. They were just people existing away from me. One afternoon, while I was looking at design boards, I saw my reflection in the window. I had my blazer on, my hair was tied back, and my face looked steady. I was a woman who wasn't hiding her success anymore just to make other people feel okay. I wasn't mistaking people's control for love anymore. I realized then that I hadn't destroyed anything. I had just stopped playing the game. The motels would open as retreats in the spring. It was a rebirth built on the truth. I finally understood that walking away wasn't abandonment. It was protection. It was protection from them, but also for myself. In the end, it wasn't the $120 million valuation that changed my life. It was the moment I realized I didn't need a family that only remembered me when they needed to be saved. Real love doesn't ask you to stay quiet. Real loyalty doesn't disappear on your biggest day. Walking out of that country club, I didn't lose anything. I reclaimed the part of myself they had taught me to hide. And if you have ever had to walk away from people who called their control care, you know exactly how good that freedom feels. If this story meant something to you, please pass it along to others. Leave a comment with your thoughts and make sure to subscribe so you can see more of our content.